Have you ever felt completely lost in a conversation with a woman, like no matter what you say, it's never enough? That sinking feeling when you realize she's testing you and you have no idea what she's testing for? If you've ever been there, you're not alone. Most men are. And I'm about to tell you something that will make you uncomfortable. Because the truth is, understanding women isn't about guessing what they want. It's about understanding how they perceive men and the signals they can't help but notice. Before we go any further, hit that subscribe button and like this video. Because the insights I'm about to share aren't fluff. They aren't surface-level dating tips. They're psychological truths that most men never get, and most women will never explain. Pay attention because your perception of attraction is about to shift. Here's the first secret. Women don't want what you think they want. They don't want more compliments. They don't want constant attention. They don't want you to try harder. What they want, what really draws them in, is certainty, presence, and boundaries. And yet most men operate in exactly the opposite way. They over-explain, over-apologize, and over-invest, creating the exact tension women are subconsciously trying to test. The moment a man understands this, everything changes. Because the games, the mixed signals, the confusion, they're not random. They're tests. And tests are not meant to annoy you. They're meant to measure your stability, confidence, and self-respect. A woman doesn't consciously decide to test you. It's instinctive. It's hardwired. She's scanning for clues. Does he get rattled? Does he chase validation? Does he bend under pressure? Most men fail these tests because they react instead of respond. They try to negotiate attraction instead of embodying it. They focus on what to say instead of who they are. And that's the trap. Here's the uncomfortable truth. No amount of clever words, gifts, or effort will make her see you differently if your energy and presence don't convey authority, calm, and clarity. Women notice micro-signals: tone, timing, pauses, hesitation. These small cues reveal whether you are secure, grounded, and emotionally self-contained, or whether you are dependent on her for approval. By the end of this video, you'll see that understanding women is not about decoding words. It's about mastering your own behavior, your own energy, and your own boundaries. Once you do that, the confusion disappears. You stop reacting to tests and start passing them effortlessly. So stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal will change how you interact with women forever. And trust me, once you see this, you'll never approach attraction the same way again. Here's the first truth most men never grasp. Women are constantly evaluating your stability, not your charm. Every word you say, every pause, every small reaction, they're subconsciously scanning for one thing. Does this man hold himself together even when tested? And here's the kicker. These tests aren't always obvious. They come in subtle challenges, mixed signals, delays in response, or even indirect criticism. Most men think they have to fix the situation, prove themselves, or convince her. That's exactly what pushes her away. Think about the last time she didn't respond the way you expected. Did you panic? Did you over-text? Did you try harder to regain control? That is the opposite of what creates attraction. Women are drawn to men who don't wobble under uncertainty. Men who understand that their worth isn't defined by approval, attention, or affection. When you stabilize yourself internally, you pass tests without even knowing they're happening. This is why older, high-value men often attract women effortlessly. They've learned the invisible rules. They don't overreact. They don't over-explain. They don't chase validation. Their presence alone signals strength, calm, and reliability. And that's magnetic. Here's how most men get it wrong. They confuse interest with control. If she pulls back, they chase. If she challenges, they argue. If she tests, they compromise. But here's the reality. Her tests are not a threat. They're an opportunity. A test reveals how grounded you really are. Do you collapse under pressure or do you stay unshaken? Do you allow emotional chaos to dictate your behavior or do you maintain clarity and calm? That distinction is everything. Now, imagine responding instead of reacting. She says something subtle, maybe even slightly provocative. You don't flinch. You don't overanalyze. You don't text 5 follow-ups to make sure she's okay. You pause, you assess, and you respond with calm certainty. That moment is invisible to most men, but it's powerful beyond measure. She notices the difference, even if she can't explain why. From a psychological perspective, women are wired to test for emotional self containment. They want to know if a man can handle tension, uncertainty, and challenge without crumbling. Because a man who can hold himself together under pressure is born predictably safe, reliably stable, and innately attractive. Most men never realize this because they focus on trying to control the outcome of interactions. They don't realize that attraction isn't created by persuasion, it's created by presence and internal authority. Mastering this principle is the first step to understanding women at a level few men ever achieve. The next truth is one that most men completely overlook, yet it's the secret that separates the average from the magnetic. Women respond to boundaries more than words. You can compliment her, buy her gifts, or send thoughtful messages, but if your boundaries are weak, your efforts feel hollow. Women unconsciously scan for limits, lines you won't cross, standards you refuse to compromise, and behaviors you will not tolerate. These invisible signals communicate far more than anything you say. Most men interpret boundaries as rules or rigidity, but that's a mistake. Boundaries are actually a magnet when used correctly. They show that you respect yourself, your time, and your energy, and that you expect the same from her. When a woman senses that you won't bend to every whim or tolerate disrespect, it triggers two reactions: curiosity and desire. She wants to understand you, to test your consistency, and to see how far she can push because it's safe for her to do so. Here's the hard truth: men fail because they confuse compliance with connection. They believe that saying yes to everything, accommodating every mood, and tolerating every disrespectful behavior will make her like them more. But the opposite is true. Overcompliance signals low value, neediness, and a lack of self-respect. It makes you predictable, easy to control, and ultimately forgettable. High-value men, on the other hand, protect their boundaries with calm authority. They don't react angrily or defensively. They stand firm without hesitation. They don't explain every decision. They don't seek approval. Their consistency tells women, this man is grounded. He knows what he will and won't tolerate. And that stability creates attraction on a level that words alone can never achieve. Consider this. Every time you ignore your standards or compromise your values to keep peace, you teach her how to treat you. She learns that your approval is negotiable. But when you enforce boundaries calmly, you set the tone for how you are respected. Respect is not demanded, it's earned through self-possession. Here's the subtle power behind boundaries. They allow you to respond instead of react. They create space for observation, analysis, and deliberate action. They let you choose whether or not to engage, and that choice gives your attention weight. Women are wired to notice energy, not effort. They feel the difference between a man who reacts out of insecurity and a man who acts from grounded authority. And here's the paradox: the stronger your boundaries, the more approachable you become, because security and consistency make a man predictably safe but unpredictably intriguing. Women are drawn to men who are solid in themselves yet capable of deep connection, not men who crumble at every subtle test. Boundaries aren't just about keeping things out, they're about signaling value, cultivating respect, and creating magnetic presence. Master this, and suddenly, what once seemed impossible to understand about women becomes clear. They are drawn to strength, consistency, and self-respect above all else. Now let's get uncomfortable, because this is where most men fail without even realizing it. Women are testing your emotional self-control, not your charm. It's almost impossible to understand them fully until you grasp this principle. Every subtle irritation, disagreement, or delayed response is a micro-test, and most men fail these tests because they react emotionally instead of responding with calm certainty. Think about it. She says something slightly provocative, or she pulls away without explanation. Most men panic. They overanalyze. They argue. They overtext. They try to fix the moment. That energy screams neediness. It tells her your emotions are dependent on her reactions. And that's a red flag in her subconscious. Attraction doesn't grow in chaos, it grows in stability. The man who passes these tests doesn't overreact. He doesn't try to control her perception. He simply maintains his internal equilibrium. And this is where most men trip up. They believe attraction is about clever words, expensive gestures, or endless attention. It's not. It's about energy, presence, and emotional self-possession. When a woman senses that you are grounded no matter what she does, it instantly elevates your value. And here's an example. She teases you in a way that would normally trigger defensiveness. A typical response would be to snap, explain yourself, or try to regain control. A man who understands the psychology behind attraction pauses, assesses, and responds in a measured, unshaken way. His calm creates curiosity. His stability communicates, I am not dependent on your approval. I am not shaken by your reactions. I am grounded in myself. That is magnetic. Emotional control isn't about being stoic or unfeeling. It's about choosing your response rather than being hijacked by impulse. Women unconsciously recognize this difference. It's why some men seem irresistible even if they don't try. They operate from clarity, not chaos. Their reactions are deliberate, measured, and authentic. Most men overlook the subtlety. It's not about dominating the conversation, winning the argument, or impressing with words. It's about holding your presence consistently, regardless of her mood, testing, or behavior. This consistency breeds respect and curiosity, two of the most powerful drivers of attraction. The hardest part? This takes self-awareness and discipline. You must confront your own insecurities, stop seeking validation, and accept that her reactions do not define your worth. Once you master this, you stop reacting to her tests and start passing them effortlessly. You begin to understand why women seem impossible at first, because most men approach them from dependency, not grounded self-possession. The moment you embrace emotional self-control, you transform every interaction. You stop chasing, stop performing, and start commanding respect naturally. That's the point where attraction becomes effortless and understanding women ceases to feel impossible. Here's a truth that most men never realize. Attraction is not created by what you would do. It's created by who you are in the interaction. Women are constantly scanning for consistency, calm, and presence. Every word, gesture, and pause sends signals about your emotional state. If you're uncertain, reactive, or desperate for approval, it leaks through, and she notices it immediately, even if she doesn't say anything. Most men make the fatal mistake of over-explaining or overcompensating to maintain connection. They believe that attraction is something they have to manufacture with effort, charm, or persuasion. But here's the reality. Effort without emotional stability creates pressure. Pressure makes women pull away. Presence creates intrigue, and presence comes from internal authority, self-respect, and boundaries. When a man embodies this presence, he stops chasing approval. He stops trying to predict or control her responses. He isn't cold or detached. He's steady, grounded, and reliably himself. That stability alone communicates value. She doesn't need to test you constantly because your behavior already answers the question she's unconsciously asking. Can he hold himself together? Let me be clear. This isn't about manipulation or mind games. It's about discipline. It's about taking ownership of your emotions and energy and refusing to hand them over to her reactions. Every man who struggles with attraction has unknowingly given women the power to dictate his mood, his confidence, and his presence. That imbalance is what kills desire, even in long-term relationships. The most magnetic men I've observed aren't flashy, overly confident, or perfect. They are consistent. They enforce their boundaries without drama. They remain unshaken in the face of ambiguity or testing. And paradoxically, this creates closeness because she feels safe to reveal herself, knowing that your stability will hold. She's not trying to control you. She's drawn to the man who doesn't require control to feel secure. Here's a practical example. She sends a subtle signal of doubt, maybe a hint of irritation or a slight withdrawal. Most men will panic, overtext, or overexplain. The high-value man pauses, assesses, and responds with calm clarity, or sometimes doesn't respond at all until it aligns with his energy. That pause, that restraint, communicates more than words ever could. I am grounded, I am in control of myself, not dependent on your approval. This principle is the core of understanding women. You don't need to decode every word or action. You don't need to perform or chase. You need to stabilize yourself, protect your energy, and enforce your boundaries. Once you do, attraction becomes effortless, respect becomes natural, and tests no longer feel like obstacles. They feel like opportunities to demonstrate your value. Master this, and what once seemed impossible to understand about women becomes clear. They respond not to your words, but to your presence, your energy, your boundaries, and your unshakable calm. Now let's bring everything together, because this is where the real transformation happens. Most men fail not because they lack charm or effort, but because they haven't mastered the art of being unshakable. Every interaction, every test, every subtle signal from her is a reflection of one thing: your internal state. And if you've spent your life giving that power away, no technique, no advice, no clever strategy will ever work. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You cannot control her reactions. You cannot make her respect you, desire you, or invest in you. But you can control yourself. You can control how you respond, how you carry your energy, and how you enforce your boundaries. That's the difference between men who are endlessly confused by women and men who seem to magnetically attract them without even trying. Think about it this way. When you say no calmly, when you say okay with grounded certainty, when you maintain presence instead of reacting, those words and actions are not just words. They are signals of a deeper strength. They communicate, I am complete, I am whole, I am in control of myself, not dependent on your approval. And women sense that on a level that bypasses logic entirely. It's instinctive, it's primal. Most men never reach this point because they're addicted to outcomes. They need approval, they need reassurance, they need her to behave a certain way. That neediness leaks into every message, every word, every glance, and it undermines everything they try to do. High-value men understand the paradox. The less you need to control her, the more she invests in you. The less you chase, the more curious she becomes. The less you perform, the more attracted she is. This is why older, grounded men often attract women effortlessly. They don't over-explain. They don't chase. They don't bend under pressure. Their calm, their boundaries, their emotional consistency speak louder than anything else. Women don't need to test them constantly because the answer is already clear. Stability, presence, self-respect, authority without arrogance. If you take one thing from this video, let it be this: understanding women isn't about decoding behavior. It's about mastering yourself. It's about holding your energy, maintaining your boundaries, and responding with calm authority to every test she unconsciously sends. When you do that, you stop reacting to her tests. You start passing them naturally. You stop chasing attention. You start attracting it. And here's the final point, the hardest truth for most men to accept. The power is never in changing her. It's in changing you. Your presence, your energy, your boundaries. Once you own that, you don't just attract her attention. You earn her respect, desire, and trust. And at that point, what once felt impossible to understand about women becomes crystal clear. You become the man she can't ignore, not because you tried, but because you embody what most men never learn to be: grounded, confident, and unapologetically yourself.